episode of the Delusion Rehab Podcast. My name is Lauren, and if this is the first episode you're joining us for, this pod is all about humbly facing our reality that we've likely been living in our own delusion because the truth is so hard to see these days. Every topic I ever bring up on here is a delusion that I've either lived out myself or I'm currently in the depths of recovery from this. So let's go down the rabbit hole that is our delusion and figure out how to live a more joyful life minus the delulu. So, quick update on me. This last week has been nothing but travel. I've been traveling so much and it's been all for the good. I came home from the Growth Day conference about a week ago from Austin. I have learned so much there. I am still absorbing everything I need to know. I'm actually headed into a Generating Wealth masterclass starting tomorrow, the 14th. So it will be day two, the time that you listen to this podcast, but you can join in at any moment because it's all self paced. We're learning how to take hold of the wealth that we can generate in this life, even giving all the political things that have been going on in the recent days. I just know that as much as I am someone proponent of learning and taking on more opportunities to grow, I know that there are other people like you out there that have that same goal. So definitely hit up the bio, check out my link for getting a free week of Growth Day and coming to see what it means to be taking charge of your life in all ways. I think that's what this podcast has truly become. It has become something where we go to it for the fact that we're humbly realizing that we've lived in delusion for too long. And I've lived in the delusion of thinking that I am the way I am and I can never grow. And I've even heard that from people that are in generations far beyond me that they've learned everything that they're going to learn and they're fine with the way they are. And it kind of breaks my heart a bit because it doesn't really live out a lifelong journey of learning. If you think that way, you're really just saying, "Oh, when I hit a certain age, I'm done learning. I'm done growing and being fruitful in my efforts every day I wake up and the impact I can have." And so I would just, like I said, check out the link. Even if you're not interested in the Generating Wealth masterclass, there is amazing content in there every day that for 15 to 20 minutes, you can get yourself roped into some personal development and understand what it means to learn and to be gracious with yourself, which is a lot of what's coming up in this podcast. Not only was I at the Growth Day conference, I went to Boston for work for 2 days. I went on a couple's overnight trip in Simsbury this past weekend with David. It was a little bit of food, a little bit of fun. We had our escape room in Weathersfield that we went to. That was the first time I did an escape room with just me and one other person. Now, David, he is the expert when it comes to escape rooms. And I'm so glad that we chose that activity together. I was nervous because I've been in escape rooms where it's been 6 plus people and, 6 minds is a lot better than 2, but they were so good. It was Laura's Labyrinth in Weathersfield. We actually finished it just over an hour. It was 65 minutes. We definitely had clues, but I'm very proud of us. So, you know, I know it's been a lot of self created chaos in the last week, between all of the places I was traveling. It has to do with my passions, my career, my personal growth, my family life, and just getting some well deserved rest in there. It was all worth it. And what's so fascinating is that in the middle of that week, an event happened among my workday that was a perfect segue into this podcast of what even is perfection. I have constantly labeled myself as a recovering perfectionist because I don't know if we ever fully come out of that as humans. We have some tendencies to want to find ourselves in perfection, which will certainly define and get down into the nitty gritty of the delusion. But to get to this story real quick. So I was on this work trip this week, and the trip was essentially to figure out a way, if there is a possibility, that I can communicate effectively a priority that is from my department out to several other departments that I work with. But I kind of took that on in a different perspective. And I tried to make it a mission to see if I could please everybody that was a part of this equation and do the job as perfectly as possible. I found myself in the middle of one of those hard conversations where I was not having my priorities well received. And I started to choke back tears, which, if you're a woman in the workplace, all power to you. If you found yourself ever like holding back emotion in the middle of a meeting, a conference room, a one on one, like, I hear you. I see you. This is a reality of mine as well. And the reason I was choking back tears is because it was in that moment that I was realizing something about myself for the first time, that the true definition I've been giving on myself of perfectionism is that I want to be understood even if I am carrying out the objective of somebody else. The definition of perfectionism is to refuse to accept any other standard besides perfect. Now, you use the word perfect in the definition perfectionism. If you're anything like me, you got to go further with the definition. So, the definition of perfect is to have all the required or desirable elements or qualities and characteristics that are being looked for. If you combine those two definitions, perfect and perfectionism, it means that you refuse to accept a lower standard than being everything you need to be. Now, who's saying you need to be these things? I think a lot of times we think it's ourselves. Well, if I'm a perfectionist, that means the standard I'm holding is the standard I'll accept because I don't want to be anything less. But based on that experience at work I had this week, I realized that my definition of a perfectionism was being based on the person in front of me. I had to be a messenger of a message that was not going to be taken well. And I knew it walking in. I joked around that it was a bit of a suicide mission because I've already had plenty of confrontations, plenty of conversations with people that I saw that I'm like, all right, I kind of know what I'm getting myself into. If you know anything about Boston culture, people just they can't with you. They don't want to deal. They want to have it their way or the highway. And it's unfortunate because it's hard to really get your point across. And I'm just this girl that grew up in rural Pennsylvania that's like, well, people will just treat me with respect because I'm doing the right thing. And that's part of where we're going with this delusion today. So it's kind of bleeding into the concept of people pleasing, which I've also received a couple messages about people really wanting to dig into this because perfectionism and people pleasing, they're kind of one and the same at times. Typically, you're not one without the other. And I want to walk into claiming what the delusion is so that we can talk about why these two concepts mesh. So let's get it out in the open. The fourth delusion in the Delusion Rehab podcast: my ability to please people as perfectly as possible will earn me appreciation and avoid criticism. I'm going to say it again because it's a lot. It's a mouthful. I get that. I really wanted to craft this so that you could hear all the elements of why we get the way we get when we're trying to be perfect. So, the delusion: my ability to please people as perfectly as possible will earn me appreciation and avoid criticism. So we got to break this down into three parts because it really is a lot to digest here, but it's about people pleasing and what we gain from people pleasing. And again, it's about the level of quality that someone's looking for, it's the level of characteristic or competency. Whatever that other person or group of people is looking for, that's where you are seeking your standard. And so we can have the head knowledge that we're imperfect as humans, human nature, but it's the heavy reality that we often misunderstand what will please others. And that gives us anxiety. I'm going to give myself as the example here. When I was pregnant in 2023, I got to shout out my husband here. He was dealing with the most impossible standards ever. I kept telling him that I recognized how impossible I was making it to please me. Um, I'm not saying that I was yelling and screaming out demands, but what I was doing was feeling one way one moment and feeling another way the next. So, yes, I'm a human that was born with the ability to have emotions that come and go, but in my first trimester, I was really struggling with the nausea, and I would tell David, "Yes, please make the pasta and chicken sausage with pesto. I will definitely wanna eat that." And an hour after, he worked really hard on it, preparing it, and I'm like, "I can't even smell this without being fully disgusted, and I'm so sorry that you worked on this so hard, but I'm gonna have leftovers maybe." And I would walk upstairs and I was like, "Oh, I really hope he understands, like, this isn't about him." You know, I was actually feeling for him as he's probably in the place of wanting to be a perfect husband to a, you know, new set of parents, trying to do the pregnancy thing right. And I even had him drive me to my in laws at 2 a.m. when the dog got sprayed by a skunk because I couldn't even handle the smell in my own home. Like I was making a lot of demands. And I think if you've been pregnant, you'll understand if you're quiet and shy and don't like to speak up for yourself often, you become a different person when you're pregnant because you end up with lots of different things that you didn't expect. And you feel like you got to communicate somehow, even if it comes out a little brash. And I felt like that a bunch of times. But I bring this example up because, as extreme as it is, right, you're in a moment of your life that you feel you need to be communicating your needs and they're going to change every hour, probably every minute. Think of how many times we drop whatever we're doing, like whatever we're doing and whatever we're working on to be something for someone else, even if it is changing by the minute. If you want to be as perfect as possible, that would mean you'd have to be perfect in any shift of the trajectory. And it's not only impossible, it would be exhausting. And yet here we are, because if you're either listening to this or you're thinking of someone you know while you're listening to this, the reason we push ourselves to that limit is because we hope that we receive one of the two false promises in the delusion that we started with, which was to have earned appreciation and avoided criticism. So, appreciation is hard to come by these days. I feel like that's not a surprise to anyone hearing this. If we all have something in common here, it's we simply do not feel a fair level of appreciation for our efforts and dedication. That's what I am wholeheartedly believing from those that are listening to this pod. You're trying. You're making life's best attempt. And unfortunately, burnout's right behind that because when appreciation is hard to come by, even though it doesn't never happen, double negative there, you're still left with breadcrumbs. I heard this story this week about an experiment that was done with mice to determine if they would continue to press a button that was automatically releasing food. If all of a sudden it stopped releasing food, would they still continue to press the button? And wouldn't you know, they did. They kept pressing that button. You'd think that because the pattern changed and they weren't receiving consistent feedback, consistent results, that they'd get tired of it and they'd say, okay, I guess this isn't working anymore. But because there was a hope that there was going to be an eventual reward, that eventually pressing that button would come up with something, even if you don't know when it is. We do this so often with our relationships with people. When I was coming up with the content for this pod, it was becoming aware in my own heart that I have cherished relationships that have breadcrumbed me and have love bombed me. Let's put that into context a little bit. How many people do you have in your life that you don't have a consistent relationship with them? Sometimes you're talking all the time, sometimes you don't talk for a year or more. When you do talk to them, it's almost like a love bomb where it's consistent. Like, I love you so much. I'm going to send you all these texts. Like, it could be a romantic relationship, but I've definitely experienced friendships like this where it's like, yes, like you are my person. You are my best friend. You are everything that I can relate to. And it becomes intoxicating because you get addicted to the feeling that wow, I don't even care if I go a year or more without talking to this person, even if that feels like a rejection. Because if I ever get that love bomb again from them, it's going to be so worth it. Like that is the addiction of dopamine talking. I am fully going to do a podcast on dopamine dumping. It is a fascinating concept, and I've just learned about it in the last couple months. I'm also highly recognizing my addiction to dopamine, and I think it's really important that we talk about it. Really, it's because we've had so much affirmation from these relationships that we assume that if we continue to people please in other relationships, and do it as perfect as possible, remember that we're going to not only gain appreciation, but we are going to have like consistent love bombing from this person, even though we know that that pattern never worked before, hasn't proven itself to ever work. And yet, just like those mice, we think that we can make do with the love bombs, even if we have the rejection on the other side. Let's talk about the avoidance of criticism, because that's the second part of like a false promise that we're buying into when we seek to people please at the highest caliber. There's probably trauma in there. And I speak to that for myself because I recently watched an Instagram reel this week too that Mel Robbins had posted where she was talking to a professional about a traumatic event she went through. And in talking with this professional, she found out that it wasn't just that the event itself was traumatic, but who she thought she was and how she felt about herself prior to that event, it just left her even more traumatized. The reason that she was more traumatized is because she did not have the courage to speak to her parents about this event. She felt that she would not be understood, that it would be put in a place that makes her feel unsafe. And I can certainly think of times when I was given criticism or I had some event happen to me that felt traumatic, but it was only more traumatic because I took it to another level and I made it about my character and who I am as a person. And I felt that that criticism was fully on me and it wasn't about the moment in time. It was about all that I am and my identity. There was a manager I had in my past, one of my first managers, who I'd go in for a year end review and I would be receiving, I'll say, quote unquote, feedback, right? Like that's a very popular word in corporate. I was given feedback. And especially as a new employee that was coming out of college, I felt like I had to defend myself, had to explain everything, had to tell people why I was doing everything I was. Why would I feel the need to do that? Because deep down, I didn't want someone to think that I approached the task with a lack of care or lack of detail. If I go back to my elementary school days, there was this teacher I had, loved him so much. There was a day that he walked into the classroom and a student was talking about something pretty vulgar. And for a fifth grader, that's like not okay. It was like an 11-year-old in the early thousands. Okay. So, like, this is like it's very likely that this was so off color compared to maybe what you'd hear a fifth grader say today. His style as a teacher was to not just punish that kid, but punish everybody because what could he do? He didn't know who really started it, and he really didn't know how he could teach this one kid a lesson. So he punished everybody, hoping that it would make the kid really feel embarrassed and never do it again. But I remember distinctly that I was so ashamed that I was even affiliated with this, that this sexual comment, the punishment came on me too. I didn't even know what the comment meant, by the way, until I got older. Like, that's what also made me feel so ashamed. I'm like, guys, I promise you, I have no idea what they're even talking about. I don't know what happened other than I was very tearful about it. I've always had that emotional, vulnerable side to me. And when the teacher approached me as I was upset, I told him it was because I was being accused of something I didn't do. And look, that's a classic life lesson. Like, a lot of us need to learn that in our life, that we can make our best attempts and our best efforts and still be misunderstood. And I think as an elementary school kid, I was really having a hard time accepting that fact of life. So while he nodded at me and said, "Yes, like I know you weren't the instigator, but hoping to teach that kid a lesson. Like, he's going to have a lot of his friends dislike him. Like, he was creating a punishment from something that wasn't truly the cause. And I just took that whole concept of being misunderstood and criticized, even if it wasn't my fault. And I've had trouble coming to my own defense ever since, because I've learned that even when I do come to defend myself, there's been people in my life that have told me that that's not very becoming of a lady. It's better for you to simply take what's told of you without fighting back. Say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. And that's given me a lot of insecurity, where I feel like someone can say something to me and I don't have a voice to speak back to them, even if it is as respectful as possible. And it's given me a lot of heartache. And here's what I've tried to do since that day is, instead of learning how to defend myself or learning how to have a voice, I have instead tried to avoid criticism at all costs. And even as I say that, I'm taking a breath of like, oh my gosh, that is so what it is. The anxiety that I've put on myself to avoid at all costs any possible comment that could be made to me, so that I don't have to feel uncomfortable with either defending myself or sitting in the fact that I'm not going to, and I'm going to just let that happen. When I take that same ideal of having a bit of a disagreement, having some criticism thrown my way, whether or not it's legitimate. When that happened to me at work, I feel like I was on both sides of the fence. I wanted to defend myself, but I also wanted to play nice in the sandbox, as they say. I reminded this person while they were criticizing that I was also a person. I brought this up last week in the pod that if you make light of the fact that we're all doing our best, most likely, and we're all imperfect people, showing people that that's something we have to keep in mind and remember, that we are humans, it will start to naturally slow down the criticism on the other side. Even if it doesn't, and this person is just gung ho about, like, no, telling you that you're wrong in every sense of the word, you show them that you're in a position of human nature and you're not one to fight the reality that you're human and imperfect. Maybe they need to take that up with God, but they definitely don't need to take that up with you. It's just a fact of life that we are not perfect. So I started the conversation with, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing that these things are annoying you. I'm probably not helping the problem all the time. I might even be messing up from your side of the picture. But the other thing I did was that I said I was in the place of wanting to learn how to make it better. If we go on the defense and say, yeah, but I'm doing it right also, that creates walls, it creates barriers, and it doesn't allow for a conversation to continue. It really does break down the relationship. I would love to say that that conversation ended perfectly. LOL. It didn't. Um, I left thinking that I might actually try to limit myself with the conversations I have with this person, based on the fact that I sought the conversation to try to become a better employee, learn more, become more familiar with how things operate outside of my reality. Like, can I get an amen to that? So many of us get so upset because we have no idea what other people's lives look like. So I was going there to really invest my time into having a day's experience in someone else's life. And yet it was just how many things I was doing wrong, right? So, of course, I was feeling emotional about that and choking back tears, like I said, but I think I walked out of that situation and into wanting to record this pod with, well, what can I tell others, and also be telling myself at the same time how to start to move away from the delusion that if we live perfectly, we're always going to be appreciated and we're never going to be criticized, because that's not happening. So here's some things I think we can do in the now, right off the bat, to get ourselves to be better adversaries of our bad thoughts, meaning conquer the things that make us struggle. in our own mind before we even have to approach anyone else. Start to thank people around you for doing their best for you. I'm sure there are people, it might be a customer service rep, it might be someone that helps you out on a project every single week at your job that they might not have to care as much as they do, but you can tell that they put more effort into it than the average Joe. Start to thank those people and be intentional about it. So it goes back to the idea that when you don't feel appreciated, you can't even think about appreciating other people because you're just angry that you're being wronged and you're not getting what you deserve. You're not getting the good side. You're not getting the reward. Many religions speak to this, but I know for a fact that God says that when we give to others, when we are servants to someone else in the speech of appreciation, in the way of being love to somebody else, that will come back to us in some way, shape, or form. It's not to say, I'm going to do this so I can get something else. It's to say, let's start a momentum and a trajectory of getting people to want to appreciate someone else. Like you be the catalyst. You be the one to thank someone a little bit extra one day. It'll give someone the inspiration to want to thank someone else. I think that there is a very lacking sense of appreciation in every sense of our lives. I'm finding that I want to be more appreciative of my husband, of my parents, my in-laws, my family members from afar that support me in all the ways that they do, my managers. I mean, anybody that has a role in my life, they deserve appreciation. And I know I'm not giving it enough. So that's something I want to be better at. But I would also encourage that you can also be the catalyst in your own world. Think about how you view yourself and ask, do I care more about being understood and liked by other people? Or do I care about learning how to be a better person and give more powerful impact to the lives of others? That's a heavy question, and it is something that we have to weigh. I feel that I am some days a little bit more on the I'd rather be liked today. Some days I'm like, no, I want to be a better person, even if that means I'm not going to be liked by everybody. But when you think about that question, know that when you get criticism from people, they're probably hurting too, and all they know how to do is hurt others. So when you feel like you're having a day where you wish that you were more liked, and criticism comes and it seems to only make you hurt more, you can have a moment where you stand tall because you remember that people that critique and look for problems on purpose are probably not the ones looking to better value their lives, grow in new ways, learn how to be a better servant to others. They're probably just looking for someone to blame because they're not in that mindset and that headspace. So keep your head high because those people are probably so much deeper in the game of perfection than you are. If you're working toward anything, which I think, like I said, most people listening to this are likely on a lifelong journey of trying to be better in their mind, in their soul, in their spirit, in their body. Start to work toward a lifestyle of self appreciation and constructive thought patterning. If we set ourselves up to let others be the ones to qualify whether we're allowed to be appreciated or constructively taught, we're totally going to find ourselves not receiving appreciation and very much receiving criticism that certainly isn't helpful. It's not constructive in any way. I don't want to let others be the ones to hold the power of whether I receive appreciation and whether I get to learn in a positive environment. It's not to say that I'll never feel shorted of appreciation by my peers and I'll never be criticized. Like no. There's going to be that. Like we live in an imperfect world itself too, guys. Like that's another thing I have to tell myself. As imperfect as I am, others are imperfect too. But I need to set my mind right, especially before I leave the house and enter the world we live in. And I'm going to say, I appreciate myself for getting up today. I appreciate myself for taking the initiative to serve my family by having a job, by getting involved in projects that maybe not other people would like to, but that I know I can be a great impact in since I'm putting my whole heart into it. I appreciate myself for showing up even when I wasn't appreciated yesterday. And I appreciate myself for all the learning that I've come to. And it's been a very messy journey. And I've considered myself a hot mess many times, but I'm still showing up and I appreciate myself for that. All of that self-talk, even before I get in the car, it's like a must now because I get really stressed as a new mom, right? Where it's like I want to be everything to everybody, but I know I can't be anything to anybody if I'm not something to myself. Like mic drop. You got to do something for you. And if it means that I got to have some affirmation because I might get some nasty comments my way later in the day, it's better to say, "Oh, at least I know I love myself." And that's what I wanted to end this pod with is be your, be you for yourself. Learn that perfectionism will die when self-love exists. I don't necessarily feel like perfectionism has to be a part of my life when I realize that I'm not relying on everyone else to validate me. It's so powerful and it's been really cool lately to not feel the stress and pressure of external validation as much as I have. Still very much on a journey of getting away from it, but I feel that there's a reason for that. I think that I'm entering a new level and season and it's exciting. But I also know that if I am not going to walk out there with a self positive image, I will automatically take what someone else says about me and make it my identity. And I'm not about that life. Can't even imagine myself living like that anymore. So, okay, guys, here are the songs for the week. I know that these songs have been very well received because it's a good mix of things that can add to your life, but can also be good reminders that we're all trying to figure this out. This is not something that anyone has perfected, right? That's the whole concept of the pod. And these are songs that remind me of how it is a struggle, but it's worth the struggle. Honor the struggle. The first song is called Circles by Rachel Nemiroff. I heard this song, I think even before COVID, and it was right about the time that I started to pivot my life from seeking love no matter where it came from to no, I need to seek love in the right places. I was definitely looking for love in all the wrong places. So when we get caught in perfectionism, like I said, we get caught in that validation trap and we are definitely not tuned into the plan and purpose that God has called us to if we're seeking external validation. So, this song reminds me of the fact that all of the chasing that we do in this life, the running in circles to make things happen, it's going to bring me back to God eventually because He's the foundation where appreciation and love for who I am is abound. And even though He might convict me into a better life, He certainly never throws criticism at me with no constructive game plan. Like I have always felt supported when God has convicted me to be a little nicer, smile a little more, give thanks and gratefulness more than I do, to stray away from situations and people that don't serve me in the way that I need to keep my positivity and keep my light and keep my witness around other people. That song hits at the right times so often for me. The second song, it's kind of an interesting perspective from the idea of perfectionism, but it's a song called Happy Now by Kygo and Sandro Cavazza. I've had these two in a previous podcast song called Beautiful, which speaks to the imperfections that we have as people and questioning whether we'll be accepted by others. This song, Happy Now, it reminds me that we often have to learn when we're giving more of ourselves to others to gain that love bombing, that inconsistent reward that feels so good in the moment, even though we know it's temporary. And the lyrics to this song speak to the hardship of when you finally come to that conclusion of, I'm living my life for the wrong reasons and I need to step away. And the lyrics to this go, You and me, it was good, but it wasn't right. It'd be hard, but I know I'll make it out. Step by step, I move on and get on with life. So I let go and I hope you'll be happy now. Now, for the longest time, I have sang that song from the perspective of like, oh, I broke up with somebody and I let go of you, but I hope that that person will be happy now. I'm finally listening to that song and realizing that I can think of myself as the singer being happy now. That letting go of the life of perfection and aiming for something that wasn't authentic from me from the beginning, it gave me temporary pleasure of appreciation and it didn't come with a lot of criticism, but that doesn't mean it's worth holding on to if it's not right. I can't just seek something that will feel like appreciation and feel like lack of criticism just to keep my heart content. If that relationship, even with an acquaintance, is keeping me held back from being appreciative of myself and of lovingly giving myself some constructive thoughts instead of being such a hard critic. So remembering the delusion that we started with, right? That people pleasing to the best of our ability is going to get us appreciation and going to limit the criticism. Here's what we should be seeking more to change the narrative on that. Seek to be your best more than doing your best. Being your best is about looking inward at your character, knowing that perfectionism in the form of to-dos, it's honestly pretty subjective anyway. None of us have a true objective view of what perfection is in most cases. So be your best on the inside instead of looking to do your best all the time. Appreciate yourself before you seek it from other people. Make you love you, meaning look at your life and say, is this a life that I love myself for? Or is somebody else giving me the reason to be something different? Speak to yourself constructively, never in a critique, because we want to gently guide ourselves to having a more fulfilled life with laughter and understanding, and not something that we need to feel we're falling so far short. Because, girl, you're probably doing a hell of a good job. Thank you for listening today. I hope you feel inspired to continue in your growth journey to work out these delusions that hold us back from being our best selves. And I will see you next time.